The bathroom light was still humming when Ethan Calloway realized his marriage had become a performance, and he was the only one who hadn't been given a script. He stood in the doorway of his own home, still in his work coat, briefcase in hand, watching three women arranged across his living room like an audience waiting for a show. His wife, Serena Calloway, sat in the center of the cream sofa, the one they had chosen together as showroom in Westport, Connecticut, on a Saturday that felt like a lifetime ago. Her friends, Darcy Whitfield and Priscilla Holden, flanked her like decorative pillars. All three of them were smiling, not warmly, the kind of smile that comes before something. "Ethan," Serena said, her voice carrying that particular brightness she reserved for when she wanted something from him in front of witnesses. "We've been waiting." He set his briefcase down near the entryway table, slower than necessary. He had learned, over 7 years of marriage, that pace was a form of language. Moving slowly said, "I am not afraid of this moment." "Waiting for what?" he asked. Darcy crossed her ankles and looked at Priscilla. Priscilla looked at the floor and pressed her lips together, suppressing something. Serena stood, smoothed her blouse with both palms, and disappeared down the hallway. The sound of her heels on the hardwood was precise, deliberate. She came back holding a single sheet of laminated paper. Laminated. Ethan noticed that immediately. She had taken the time to laminate it. She walked to him, extended the paper with 2 fingers as though presenting a document of some importance, and said, "I need you to read this, and then I need you to sign it." He took the paper. The heading at the top read, "Marriage Expectations, Mutual Agreement." Below it was a numbered list, 12 items. He read slowly, despite the pressure of 6 eyes on him. Item 1. Ethan will not make plans on weekends without first consulting Serena. Item 3. Ethan will prioritize Serena's social schedule above his professional networking obligations. Item 7. Ethan will not make financial decisions exceeding $500 without Serena's written approval. Item 9. Ethan will acknowledge that Serena's emotional needs take priority in all household disagreements. Item 12. Failure to uphold these expectations shall be considered a breach of marital commitment. He read it twice, not because he didn't understand it the first time, but because he wanted to be completely sure he wasn't misreading the tone. He was not. Behind him, Darcy made a sound, not quite a laugh, but the breath before one. Serena tilted her head. "We just think," she said, using the word "we" with a comfortable authority, "that some clarity would be healthy for the relationship." "We," Ethan repeated. I," Serena said, adjusting without embarrassment. Priscilla looked at the ceiling. Ethan folded the laminated paper in half, which was difficult because it was laminated, and set it on the entryway table beside his briefcase. "Let me get something," he said. He picked up his briefcase. Serena's smile flickered slightly. She had expected resistance, tears, an argument she had rehearsed for. She had not expected him to simply walk to the study. He was gone for 40 seconds. He knew because he counted them. He opened the bottom drawer of his desk, the one with the small lock he had installed 18 months ago, which Serena had complained about twice and then forgotten. He removed a manila envelope. Inside it were documents that had been prepared, reviewed, and quietly notarized 3 weeks earlier by his attorney, Griffin Harcastle, at a private firm in downtown Stamford. He walked back down the hallway. He re-entered the living room. He set the manila envelope on the coffee table between the sofa and the armchairs with the same calm energy one might use to place a book they had already finished reading. "What is that?" Serena asked. "Something I also need you to read," Ethan said. "And then I'll need you to sign it." Serena looked at the envelope, then at Ethan, then at Darcy. She reached forward and lifted the envelope flap. The paper she pulled out was cream-colored, formatted in legal font, and bore the seal of the state of Connecticut at the top. She read the first line. The smile, the one that had been sitting on her face since before he walked through the door, didn't fade gradually. It simply stopped, like a light switched off. From where Ethan stood, he could see the exact moment each woman in the room understood what they were looking at. Darcy's chin lifted. Priscilla uncrossed her ankles and sat forward. Serena's hand lowered the paper slightly, as though it had become heavier than expected. No one laughed. The hum of the bathroom light down the hallway was the only sound in the house. Let's go back to the beginning, because this ending was not born on the night of the list. It was built quietly and with great patience over the course of 2.5 years. Ethan Reed Callaway was 41 years old, a senior structural consultant for a civil engineering firm based in Stamford, Connecticut. He had grown up in Darien, old money suburb, quiet streets, the kind of town where ambition was expected but not discussed openly. He had married Serena Fontaine Callaway 9 years ago at a small ceremony in Newport, Rhode Island. At the time, Serena was 32, working as an interior design consultant with a boutique firm in Fairfield County. She was witty, confident, socially precise, someone who could command a room without seeming to try. Ethan had admired that quality enormously in the beginning. It had taken him years to understand that qualities admired in a partner can, under certain conditions, become something else entirely. The first shift had been subtle. Small social corrections. Serena redirecting his comments at dinner parties, speaking for him before he could finish a thought, laughing off his professional opinions with a fondness that had just enough edge in it to sting. He had told himself it was personality. Then he told himself it was stress. She had left her firm and was building an independent practice, which was genuinely difficult. Then he told himself a version of the story that didn't require him to make any decisions, which is the version most people choose for longest. But the summer before the night of the list had been different. Ethan's firm had been contracted for a major infrastructure project in New Haven, the kind of career milestone that happens once, maybe twice, in an engineer's professional life. The hours were significant. The pressure was significant. And Serena had responded to his absence not with support, but with escalation. She began reorganizing their social calendar without consulting him, booking dinners on evenings he had explicitly marked unavailable, committing him to weekend obligations that conflicted with project deadlines, then expressing genuine, theatrical surprise when he couldn't attend. She had also developed a habit, a new one, or one that had always existed but now no longer bothered to conceal itself, of making financial decisions and presenting them as already resolved. A bathroom renovation he hadn't approved. A car lease upgrade that had arrived as a fait accompli. A joint savings account quietly shifted into a money market product that locked withdrawals for 6 months. Decided, she told him casually over dinner, because she had read an article about it. When he raised objections, Serena did not argue in the traditional sense. She reframed. You're so stressed right now, you're not thinking clearly. I just want what's best for us. Why are you making this a big deal? I thought you trusted me. The reframes were always said with a particular softness that made Ethan feel, in the moment, as though the discomfort he was experiencing was a personal failing. It had taken a conversation with his older brother, Marcus Callaway, over golf on a Tuesday morning in September to name what was actually happening. Marcus had listened for 45 minutes without interrupting. Then he had said, Ethan, you're describing a power structure, not a marriage. Ethan had driven home that afternoon and sat in the car in the driveway for 22 minutes before going inside. Something had shifted in him that day. Not anger, clarity. He did not act immediately. That was important to understand about who Ethan was. He was not impulsive. He was not reactionary. He was a structural engineer, which meant he had been trained, professionally and temperamentally, to look at load-bearing systems and identify which ones were failing before the collapse happened. He made an appointment with Griffin Hardcastle the following week. Not to file anything. Not yet. Just to understand his options. Griffin, quiet, experienced matter of fact, had walked him through the landscape of Connecticut divorce law with the same energy a contractor might use to walk someone through a renovation estimate. Ethan had listened. He had asked intelligent questions. He had gone home and said nothing. He had then watched, carefully, without performance, as the following months unfolded. He kept notes, not dramatic ones, just dates, events, financial decisions made without him, agreements committed to in his name without his knowledge. He documented them the way he documented load calculations, without emotion, but with precision. He made a second appointment with Griffin in January. He made a third in March. By the time the manila envelope was prepared, notarized, and placed in the locked drawer of his study desk, Ethan Calloway had been quietly ready for 23 days. Now, take a moment here because this is worth pausing on. Ethan spent nearly 3 years absorbing, adjusting, and documenting before he made a single decisive move. A lot of people watching this might ask, why did he wait so long? And some might ask the harder question, what does it say about a person that they prepare in silence rather than confront in the open? Drop your thoughts in the comments. There's no right answer, and the people in this story don't have simple ones either. The weeks after the night of the list were not dramatic in the way television has trained us to expect. There was no screaming. There was no throwing of objects. There was initially silence. Serena had set the laminated paper down on the coffee table and looked at Ethan for a very long time. Darcy had quietly collected her coat. Priscilla had said, very softly, "I'll call you tomorrow, Serena," and left without making eye contact with anyone. What followed, over the next several days, was a sequence of conversations that moved through predictable phases: disbelief, then reinterpretation, then bargaining presented as insight. Serena called her sister in Greenwich the morning after. She called her mother in Darien. She called Darcy twice. She did not, in those first 48 hours, call a divorce attorney. That gap, those 48 hours, would later matter in ways she hadn't anticipated. Ethan, meanwhile, had moved quietly to the guest room on the 3rd floor. Not out of hostility, out of clarity. He continued going to work. He continued his project obligations in New Haven. He ate breakfast early and left before Serena came downstairs. He was not cold. He was not theatrical. He was simply no longer performing the role the script had asked him to play. Serena, to her credit, and she did have credit, because she was not a villain in this story any more than he was a hero, made her first real overture on the 4th day. She knocked on the guest room door at 9 in the evening. She was not dressed strategically. She was in an oversized sweater and socks, and she looked genuinely uncertain, an expression Ethan had not seen on her face in a long time. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Yes," he said. She sat in the chair near the window. He sat on the edge of the bed. Neither of them moved for a moment. "I didn't think you'd actually done it," she said. "Done what?" he asked, not to be unkind, but because he wanted the sentence to be completed. "Prepared that. The papers." He nodded. "When?" she asked. 3 weeks ago," he said. She absorbed that. Were you planning to just—" "No," he said. "I wasn't planning anything. I was ready for whatever came." She looked at the window. Outside, the elm trees on their street were still bare. March and Westport had that particular quality, gray and unconvinced, not yet committed to anything. "The list was Darcy's idea," Serena said quietly. Ethan said nothing. "I don't mean I agreed to it. I'm not blaming her. But the framing, the signing it, She stopped. "The audience," Ethan offered. She closed her eyes briefly. "Yes," she said. "That was wrong." It was the first unguarded sentence she had said to him in a very long time. He recognized it as such. "Serena," he said, "this didn't start 3 weeks ago. This didn't start with the list." "I know," she said. "Do you?" She looked at him, really looked, and for a moment he saw the woman from Newport, the one from the Saturday at the furniture showroom, the one who used to call him from work just to describe something interesting she had seen on her lunch walk. "I think," she said slowly, I think I needed to feel like I was in control of something. And I used the closest available thing. It was not a full accounting. It was not an apology in the complete sense. But it was honest. And honesty, after the years they had just traveled through, was its own rare currency. The legal process took 8 months. Griffin Hardcastle handled Ethan's representation. Serena retained her own attorney, a woman named Cassandra Vreeland, known in Fairfield County legal circles as thorough and unsentimental. The proceedings were not hostile, but they were not simple. The Connecticut courts required full financial disclosure, which brought the unauthorized account changes and unilateral renovations into formal documentation. It did not help Serena's position. The final settlement was equitable in the legal sense. The Westport house was sold, proceeds divided, retirement accounts calculated, the locked money market account dissolved and split. Serena returned to consulting, eventually relocating to a smaller but genuinely beautiful apartment in Norwalk. Ethan completed the New Haven project and was offered a partnership at his firm, an offer he accepted on a Wednesday afternoon with no one in the room but Griffin, who shook his hand and said simply, "Well done." He moved to a house in Old Greenwich, close to the water, which he had always wanted. He did not date for a long time, not out of bitterness, out of preference for his own company, which was something he had not had enough of in a long time. He learned, slowly and with some difficulty, that solitude chosen freely felt nothing like isolation. He kept one photograph from his marriage, not for sentiment, but because it was from Newport, and in it, both of them were laughing at something genuinely funny that neither of them could later remember. He kept it in a drawer, not displayed, not discarded, just kept. Serena, 18 months after the settlement, sent him a brief email. 3 sentences. It said that she had been working with a therapist, that she understood now what the dynamic had been, and that she was sorry in a way she hadn't been capable of being at the time. Ethan read it twice. He did not respond immediately. He thought about it for 4 days. Then he wrote back 2 sentences. "Thank you for saying that. I hope you're well." And he meant both of them. My personal reflection. What makes this story uncomfortable to watch, and the discomfort is worth sitting with, is that neither person here is a straightforward villain. Serena Calloway did real harm. The financial decisions made unilaterally, the reframing of his objections as personal weakness, the public staging of the list with an audience designed to humiliate. These were not small things. They were a pattern of control, and control disguised as love is one of the more insidious dynamics a relationship can develop, precisely because it is always deniable, always repackageable as concern or organization or simply knowing what's best. But Ethan is not without his own complexity. A man who spends 3 years quietly documenting, preparing, and waiting, and who chooses the most strategic possible moment to reveal his exit, is not simply a victim making a clean escape. There is something in that choice, that precision, that control of timing, which deserves examination. He was effective. He was also cold, in the way that very controlled people can be cold. Not cruel, but sealed off in a way that leaves no room for the other person to course correct before the door closes. The therapists of the world would note, gently, that Ethan's capacity for long-term, silent endurance, while admirable in one light, also raises questions about whether he ever gave the marriage a real chance at repair before he began preparing its end. We tend to frame the person who endures as automatically righteous. That framing is understandable, but incomplete. What this story ultimately reflects is something common and rarely spoken about. 2 people who stopped being honest with each other long before any document was signed, and who both, in different ways, chose strategy over vulnerability. Serena's strategy was visible and public. Ethan's was private and meticulous. Both of them, in the end, were protecting themselves from something they couldn't name out loud while the other was still in the room. The email Serena sent 18 months later, and Ethan's 2-sentence reply, is perhaps the most human moment in the entire story. Not because it resolves anything, but because it was the first exchange between them in years that neither person had prepared in advance.